Hello everybody, and welcome to my version of floating combat text. This is a very simple, version of floating combat text that I found out how to do. And since there were very few resources online showing how to do this kind of stuff, I figured I might as well post something. So this is what we'll be able to create once we're done with this. You can see the text moves up nicely and disappears once it gets to the top. Alright, so the first thing that we need to do is create a new project. So if you haven't done so already, go ahead and create a project of the first person shooter type. And then once you have that created, what we need to do is create a widget. So go to user interfaces and widget blueprint. And we're going to name this some arbitrary name. I'm going to use floating text. And then once you have that created, go ahead and open that up. Okay, in the designer tab, you got this little screen here. We're going to click on the canvas panel and delete that since we won't be using it. In its place, what we need to do is add a size box to act as a container for a text block. Okay, once you have those two in there, we're going to go down and create an animation. So click on the new tab, new button, and I'm going to call this floating text Annie. Okay, good enough. Then select that. Make sure that auto key is selected. And then what we're going to do, make sure that your size box is selected. You need to scroll down, find render transform, expand that, and then under translation, we're going to go to the Y axis and change this around a bit. So this is what's going to allow our text to move up. So the first thing we need to do in order to get the keys to show up on our animation timeline here, I hit 1, enter, and then we need to change that back to 0, so 0, enter. Alright, then take your scroll bar down here on the animation timeline, move it to about 0.5, then go back to translation y-axis and set this to -300. So that will determine how far up our text is going to float. Once you have that done, we can go ahead and go to the graph, and we're going to create a variable of the float type. And I'm going to name this float text, or we'll float damage. Okay, and then create another variable of the actor type. And then I'm just going to call this actor reference. So we'll need this reference to the actor so that we know which object we're actually shooting. Make sure you set that to public and set float damage to public. For actor, we want to make sure that we also set this to expose on spawn. Okay, file save. Now, in the event graph, we're going to get a event construct node. Okay, and from here we're going to get a set alignment and viewport node. Then for our alignment, we're going to set both X and Y to 0.5. Okay, then off of this we need to grab a delay node, and the delay is going to wait a certain amount of time before it destroys this widget. So we're going to set this to 0.5 because that's what we used in our animation. And then we need to remove from parent. Okay, once you have that set up, go ahead and scroll down here. We're going to go to event tick, or sorry, get an event tick. Okay, off our event tick, we need to get a set visibility. Set viz. And then from our set viz, we need to set the position in viewport. Okay, now we need to get player controller. Just like to point out at this time that this setup here was something that I got off of the tutorial on how to create an inventory. He uses it to display text above the objects that you get ready to pick up. So since it works so well for that, I figured it'd work well for this. Alright, so off the return value, what we need to do is convert world location to screen location. Plug that in up here. Okay, now we need our actor reference, so we'll get that. And then we need to find the location of our actor. So get actor location. Now with this, what we need to do is get a vector plus vector. And we're going to set this to, I don't know, I'm going to use 150. That's what I've been using. What this is going to do is it's going to move where the text initially spawns up a little bit above the actor, instead of spawning, I guess, at the origin of the actor. Okay, and the last thing that we will need to do here is get a select node. Once you have that, take your return bool value, plug it in the index. That will change this to a true-false switch. Then we need to pull off our set invisibility, plug that to the return value, and then if false, set to hidden, and if true, set to visible. Okay, should be good with that for now. Actually, let's go ahead and finish this. Okay, go back to your designer tab and select your text box, and we're going to create a binding for the text. So this will pull in the damage that's done to the object, and that's what will be displayed as your floating combat text. So we're going to get our float damage variable that we created and then plug that right into there. File save. Okay, the next thing we need to do is create the actual actor that's going to take damage and then have the text display above it. So blueprint, create actor, we'll say float actor. Whoops, I sure did spell that wrong. Alright, once you have that created, go ahead and open that up. In the components tab, we need to add a static mesh component, and for the mesh I'm using the cube. And then all these settings here can be left alone. For our purposes, we're not really going to be messing with those. Okay, go to graph, and what we need is event take damage, or event any damage node. Damage, we're going to go any damage. Okay, then off the event any damaged node, we need to spawn our widget. So go and create widget. And the widget that we're creating is our floating, well, I called it test. So our floating test widget. No, floating text is what it was supposed to be. Alright, so as you can see, we had the actor reference exposed on spawn. That gives us this node here, or bub, whatever you want to call it. And what we need to do is get the instant of this actor and plug that in there. So what we could do for that is drag off here and get a reference to self. So that makes sure that for every instance of this actor that we have in the game, it'll reference the correct one when applying the damage. Alright, the next thing we want to do is, I believe, set this to visible. Let's see, add to viewport, sorry. Okay, so add to view. This will work a lot better if we do it like this. Okay, now what we need to do is play our animation that we had created earlier. So drag off this, play animation, plug that in. Okay, and then drag off this again, and we're going to get our floating text Annie that we created, and that's the animation that we're playing. Okay, and the last thing for this, what we need to do is set the float variable inside our widget that we created for our damage. So drag off this again, set float damage. Okay, and then attach your damage to that. And I believe we're done with this. So the final thing that we need to do is modify my projectile to cause damage. So for my purposes, we don't need any of this. If you do decide to keep this, make sure that you pull off the false tab here, because we did not set our object to simulate physics. So you'll need to pull off the false to do this next part. But if you're just copying like what I'm doing, you can delete all this and drag off this and then apply damage. Okay, and then I'm going to set my base damage to 10. Okay, our damage causer, you probably don't need to add this, but I like to add this anyways. Just get a reference to self. And then as far as the damage actor goes, off of your hit event, we need the actor reference. Plug that into there. Okay, so that's all that you need to do for that. And I believe we are set for everything else. Alright. Now we bring one of these actors into the level and give it a shot. And there you go. You can see the text scrolls up. Again, this is just a very basic way of doing it. I'm not sure if there's better ways of doing it. Like I said, there wasn't too much documentation out there on how to create these. I figured there would be because it's fairly easy, but hopefully this will help some other people. If you do know of a better way, please comment on the video. That way I'll be able to take a look at it and hopefully give that a shot. Alright, thank you all for watching.